The year was 2147, and humanity teetered on the edge of extinction. Not by war, nor by disease, but by the cold, unyielding vastness of space. The dream of interstellar expansion had become a nightmare of failed colonies, lost expeditions, and dwindling resources. Earth itself was on borrowed time. Overpopulation, climate decay, and a failing biosphere left only one option: leave or die. The United Terran Federation, UTF, humanity's desperate attempt at a unified government, had one last gamble: Project Arcstorm. A fleet of generational colony ships, packed with what remained of Earth's brightest minds, strongest warriors, and most daring explorers, would be launched into deep space. Their mission: find a new home among the stars or perish trying. Commander Elias Voss, a hardened veteran of the Martian reclamation wars, stood on the bridge of the U.T.F. Dauntless, the lead ship of the fleet. His icy blue eyes swept across the holographic projections of their destination, an uncharted system designated XG-479, located in the Perseus arm of the Milky Way. It was far beyond the reach of previous expeditions, a true leap into the unknown. Final checks are complete, sir. All ships report ready for the jump, said Lieutenant Camila Huang, his second-in-command. Voss nodded. Then let's not keep destiny waiting. The fleet's experimental jump drives, powered by the unstable but powerful Zeta-core reactors, began their activation sequence. The Dauntless trembled as space itself twisted and folded around it. Then, in a flash of brilliant light, the fleet was gone, plunged into the abyss between stars. But fate was never kind to humanity. The ambush. The moment the fleet emerged into real space, alarms blared across the bridge. A colossal alien warship, bristling with weapons, hovered above the nearest planet. Its hull was an eerie black, absorbing the starlight around it. Contact. Unknown vessel, bearing 276 Mark 90. No known transponder codes, shouted Tactical Officer Dren Volkov. Open a channel. Voss barked. Before the words even left his lips, the alien ship fired. A beam of pulsing energy lanced through the fleet, carving through the smaller escort ships like a hot knife through ice. Explosions bloomed in the void as entire sections of the fleet were annihilated. The U.T.F. Vanguard took a direct hit, splitting apart in a violent fireball that sent debris spiraling into the darkness. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. Voss commanded, gripping the console so hard his knuckles turned white. The Dauntless and the remaining warships unleashed a salvo of railgun rounds and missile barrages. The alien vessel's shields flared, absorbing the onslaught like an impenetrable wall. Then, impossibly, it returned fire, splitting its massive energy beam into multiple smaller streams that targeted each ship with pinpoint precision. We're getting slaughtered. Volkov yelled, panic creeping into his voice. Voss cursed under his breath. This wasn't just an ambush, it was extermination. Humanity had arrived at the doorstep of a force far beyond their understanding. The last stand. With the fleet in shambles, Voss knew he had only one option: a suicidal charge. If they could disable the alien warship's weapons, even temporarily, the colony ships might have a chance to escape. All remaining warships, form up on me. We punch a hole in that thing or we die trying. The Dauntless led the charge, engines burning at maximum thrust. The remaining ships followed, weaving through the wreckage of their fallen comrades. As they neared the alien vessel, the bridge crew could finally see its surface, etched with symbols glowing a menacing crimson, as if the ship itself were alive. Fire everything! Voss roared. Dozens of railgun slugs, torpedoes, and plasma bolts slammed into the alien ship's hull. At the last second, Voss fired the Dauntless main cannon, a prototype weapon designed to pierce even the densest armor. The blast tore into the alien vessel's shielding, sending arcs of energy crackling across its surface. For a brief moment, it worked. The enemy ship flickered, its weapons stalling for mere seconds. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Colony ships, go! The remaining Arcstorm ships, the last hope of humanity, burned hard for the planet below. But the momentary victory came at a cost. The alien warship reawakened. A final, cataclysmic blast erupted from its core, striking the Dauntless dead center. The bridge filled with fire and debris as consoles exploded. Voss felt himself being hurled backward, his body weightless as the ship buckled beneath him. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the colony ships disappearing into the clouds of their new home. Darkness. Then, pain. Commander Elias Voss forced his eyes open, his vision swimming with red emergency lights. The U.T.F. Dauntless was a dying husk, its bridge reduced to a twisted wreck of sparking wires and shattered steel. The last thing he remembered was the alien warship's final, devastating shot, then nothing. He coughed, tasting blood. His ears rang from the distant sound of explosions rippling through the ship. Commander Voss, can you hear me? Lieutenant Camilla Huang's face appeared above him, streaked with soot and desperation. She pressed a shaking hand against his chest, scanning him with a medical device. You're alive, she breathed, more to herself than to him. Voss groaned as she helped him sit up. The Dauntless was barely holding together. Fires raged in the corridors beyond, and gravity flickered as the ship's power systems failed. The fleet? Voss rasped. Huang's face darkened. Destroyed. What's left of our escorts were vaporized in the first strike. The Vanguard was lost with all hands. Only a few ships made it to the planet's surface. Voss clenched his fists. It was worse than he had feared. And the enemy? Huang hesitated. Gone. After they hit us, they just left. That was strange. If these aliens wanted humanity wiped out, why not finish the job? Why leave survivors? His thoughts were interrupted by a static-laced transmission. Nyon. This is Captain Lorne of the U.T.F. Resolute. We've crash-landed on the surface. We have survivors, but we're under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. We. The signal cut off in a burst of static. Voss didn't hesitate. He forced himself to his feet, fighting off the dizziness. We need to get down there. Now. Huang looked at him like he was insane. Commander, the Dauntless is barely holding together. If we don't evacuate now. Voss grabbed her shoulder. Then we die on our feet, fighting. Or do you want to go out suffocating in this wreck? Huang swallowed, then nodded. All right, she said, straightening. Escape pods are gone, but there's one last dropship in the hangar. Voss grinned despite the pain. Then let's go introduce ourselves properly. The new battlefield. The dropship plunged through the thick, storm-racked atmosphere of the planet below. Outside the viewport, Voss could see the distant wreckage of human colony ships smoldering across the surface. Beyond them, alien structures, towering spires of black stone, rose from the ground like the teeth of some ancient beast. The planet wasn't empty. It was occupied. As they neared the crash site of the Resolute, movement flickered in the distance. Strange, insect-like figures darted through the ruins, weapons clutched in clawed hands. Their carapaces gleamed under the weak light of the alien sun. Then, flashes of gunfire. Human gunfire. They're still fighting, Huang breathed. Voss's eyes hardened. Then we joined the battle. The dropship's thrusters screamed as they neared the ground, and Voss gripped his rifle. The real fight for humanity's survival was about to begin. The dropship's landing gear slammed into the scorched earth, sending a tremor through the hull. The hatch blew open with a hiss, and Commander Voss was the first to charge out, his boots sinking into the wet, charred ground. The landscape around him was a dystopian wasteland, twisted metal, burning wreckage, and the occasional flash of alien weapon fire cutting through the smoke. Behind him, Lieutenant Huang followed, her plasma rifle at the ready. The rest of their team, survivors from the Dauntless, brought up the rear. All were battle-hardened, their eyes steely with resolve. But they could sense it, too, something was off about this place. The planet had once held promise as a new home for humanity, but now it was a battlefield, and they were the intruders. Secure the perimeter. Voss barked, and the team spread out, their rifles sweeping the horizon for movement. The alien structures loomed in the distance, black monoliths rising up from the scorched earth like silent sentinels. The creatures they'd seen from the dropship were no longer visible, but Voss knew they were out there, watching. He could feel their presence, the weight of their eyes on his every move. "Commander," Huang's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm picking up strange signals. Not just from the aliens, there's something else, something human." Voss's heart skipped a beat. "Human? Where?" "It's faint," she replied. "Coming from the other side of the alien spires. It's not one of ours, though. It's not a Federation code. But it's definitely human." Voss's mind raced. The idea of other survivors, possibly even other factions, was a twist neither he nor anyone else had expected. Could these be the remains of a prior mission? A lost expedition? Or had they been stranded here, like him, after the warship had attacked? "Team, we're moving out. Stay sharp." They began trekking toward the source of the signal, cutting through the twisted wreckage of their fallen comrades. Every step was heavy with tension, each shadow held the promise of an ambush. As they neared the spires, the faint signal grew stronger, but so did the sounds of alien movement. Something was drawing closer, and it wasn't human. The ground shook again, but this time it wasn't from the dropship or explosions. It was something much larger. Voss raised his rifle, signaling for the team to take cover. Then, a screech echoed through the air, an inhuman wail that chilled the blood. The aliens had arrived. They were unlike anything Voss had seen before. Their bodies were sleek and segmented, their black exoskeletons reflecting the light like polished obsidian. Each alien was adorned with glowing red symbols etched into their armor. They moved with eerie grace, their multifaceted eyes fixed on the humans as they emerged from the shadows. There were too many of them. "Contact," one of the soldiers shouted, but Voss already had his answer. "Fall back," he commanded. But it was too late. The aliens charged, faster than anything human physiology could anticipate. The first shots rang out, and chaos erupted. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, cutting down a few of the alien invaders, but their armor absorbed most of the fire. The human team fought fiercely, but they were being overwhelmed. Voss took a deep breath, steeling himself. This wasn't the time to retreat, not when they had so much to lose. He raised his weapon and fired. The alien in front of him collapsed, but the others surged forward. Then, from the distance, came a flash of light, a powerful explosion that ripped through the alien ranks. It was followed by another, then another. The gunfire stopped as everyone turned to see the source of the assault. From the edge of the wreckage, a group of heavily armored humans appeared. They wore no Federation insignia, but their weapons were advanced, clearly designed for combat against the very aliens they were facing. The leader, a tall woman with short-cropped black hair and a scar running across her cheek, raised her hand. "Hold your fire," she shouted. "We're here to help." Voss's heart raced. A new faction, and they were already here, in force. The battlefield shifted in an instant. Humanity wasn't alone on this planet, but whether they were allies or enemies was still to be determined. Voss stepped forward, cautiously lowering his weapon. "You're human?" he called out, suspicion heavy in his voice. The woman nodded, her expression hard. "We're survivors. The name's Captain Rhea Varnes of the Phoenix Legion. We've been stuck here for years." "Years?" Huang repeated, voice incredulous. "But the Dauntless only just arrived." "Time works differently here," Captain Varnes explained. "We've been at war with these things for centuries. You're not the first to crash on this planet. And unless you want to end up like the others," she let her words hang in the air, unspoken. Voss's mind reeled. Centuries? How was that possible? "Then we need to work together," Voss said, determination flaring. "We need to stop them before they finish what they started." Varney's met his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Agreed. But don't trust everything you see on this world. It's not just the aliens you need to worry about. Voss didn't need to ask what she meant. The war for humanity's future was far from over. The human survivors, now united under the banner of the Phoenix Legion, prepared to move out. The immediate danger posed by the alien assault had subsided, thanks to their timely intervention, but the war was far from over. Voss, Huang, and the rest of the dauntless crew were still reeling from the shock of the encounter. They had landed on a planet with far more history and danger than they'd anticipated. Captain Varney's had led them to a makeshift encampment built into the skeletal remains of one of their fallen ships. Inside, walls of metal were adorned with makeshift barricades, and advanced technology hummed in the background. The survivors were battle-hardened, grim, and wary, but there was a quiet sense of camaraderie between them, forged in the crucible of years spent fighting on this forsaken planet. Voss and Varney sat at a table covered with star maps and data pads, the dim light of a flickering flame casting long shadows across their faces. "We're not just facing the aliens," Varney said, tapping a symbol on the map. "This planet, XG-479, has secrets. We've learned some of them the hard way." Voss leaned in, studying the map. "Secrets?" "Ancient ones," Varney's replied, her voice low. "We thought this was just another uncharted world, but it's more like a battleground. There's something beneath the surface, something the aliens are trying to protect. I think that's why they're so determined to wipe us out. It's not about conquering the stars, it's about keeping us from discovering what's down there." "Something more powerful than them?" Huang asked, disbelief flickering in her voice. "Possibly," Varney said, her eyes narrowing. "Or something that could turn the tide in our favor. I don't know what it is, but I've seen them retreat when they get too close to certain locations. They're terrified of it. And they'll do anything to keep it hidden." Voss's mind raced. Could the key to humanity's survival be buried under the ground of this hostile world? If the aliens were so desperate to keep it secret, then perhaps it was their weakness, their true vulnerability. "How do we get to it?" Voss asked. Varney's lips tightened into a grim smile. "We don't just walk in. The alien presence is concentrated around the area. We'll need to make a run for it, and that means we'll be facing their full force. Then we'll hit them hard," Voss said, determination in his voice. "We've got one shot at this." The others gathered around, nodding. The survivors of the Phoenix Legion were ready. They had fought for years, always on the defensive, always reacting to the alien onslaught. But this time, they would take the fight to the enemy. Into the depths. The group moved out under cover of darkness, their figures silhouetted against the distant glow of alien outposts. They moved in tight formation, weapons drawn, their eyes scanning every shadow. The eerie hum of the alien structures reverberated through the air as they approached the heart of the alien stronghold. Varney's led the way, her sharp instincts guiding them through the landscape of wreckage. Voss, Huang, and the others followed, hearts pounding in their chests. There was something oppressive about this place, something ancient and ominous. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse, as if alive. The further they went, the more they could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. As they neared the alien stronghold, the air grew thick with tension. The sounds of the alien patrols grew louder, their movements swift and silent. Voss motioned for the group to halt, and they took cover behind the shattered remains of an old outpost. "We're almost there," Varney's whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just a little further." Suddenly, a soft screech echoed through the air, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a towering alien soldier, its red markings glowing in the dim light. It stood still for a moment, scanning the surroundings, its antennae twitching. Voss held his breath, watching the creature's every move. If they were spotted now, the mission would be over before it even began. But then, to their surprise, the alien moved on, disappearing into the darkness. "What the hell was that?" Huang asked, her voice a mix of confusion and relief. Varney's expression was grim. It's not just the aliens we need to worry about. Something's here with us. As if on cue, the ground shook violently beneath them, throwing everyone off balance. The alien patrols were on high alert now, moving in every direction. Something, or someone, was stirring beneath the surface. We don't have much time, Voss said, regaining his footing. We move now, or we risk being caught in the open. They pressed on, moving deeper into the alien heartland. The landscape twisted and turned, with unnatural structures rising from the ground like skeletal fingers. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the silence that hung in the air was almost suffocating. And then, they reached it. At the base of a massive alien tower, half buried beneath the earth, was an entrance, hidden beneath layers of stone and metal. The entrance led down into the depths of the planet. Varney's motioned for everyone to halt. This is it. Whatever is down there, we find it now. Voss felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the opening. This was it. The heart of darkness. The entrance loomed before them, an ominous darkened passage that seemed to swallow the light from their torches. The air that seeped from it was cold, with a musty, metallic tang that sent a chill through their bones. Voss led the way, his rifle held tightly in his grip, his every step cautious but resolute. Behind him, the team followed, each member aware that the moment they entered this subterranean labyrinth, there would be no turning back. The air grew colder as they descended, the sound of their boots echoing off the stone walls. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became, until the only thing they could hear was the steady rhythm of their own breathing and the soft hum of the alien structures above them. Suddenly, Varney's held up her hand, signaling for them to stop. Something's wrong, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Voss narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? I don't know, Varney said, scanning the darkened tunnel ahead. It's too quiet. There should be more alien activity down here, more patrols, more defenses. But it's almost as if they're waiting. A sense of unease settled over Voss. The entire situation felt wrong. The aliens were relentless in their attacks, yet now they were retreating. The tension in the air was palpable, something huge was about to happen. They moved forward again, more cautiously than before. As they reached the end of the tunnel, the walls opened up into a vast underground chamber. At the center of the chamber stood a massive, pulsating energy core. It hovered in mid-air, surrounded by a complex network of alien machinery that seemed to be feeding energy into it. The entire chamber thrummed with a low, vibrating hum, an unnatural, rhythmic sound that seemed to echo through the bones. What is that? Huang whispered, her eyes wide with awe and fear. That, Varney said, her voice tight, is the heart of the planet. Or, rather, what they've been protecting all these years. Voss stepped forward, instinctively drawn toward the core. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The energy emanating from it was pure, raw power, and yet it felt wrong. His hand instinctively moved toward the rifle slung across his back, as if he could sense a greater threat waiting just out of sight. Suddenly, the room erupted with a sharp, shrill sound, like the shriek of a dying animal. The core's energy flared, its light blinding. The walls trembled as if the entire planet was coming alive. What's happening? Huang shouted over the noise. We've triggered something. Voss yelled, his voice strained. Get ready. The chamber's temperature spiked, and the alien machines began to hum violently. But it wasn't the core that concerned them, it was the ground beneath them. The chamber split open in multiple places, and from the cracks emerged strange, insectoid figures, more alien soldiers, but these were different. These were larger, more armored, and their eyes glowed a menacing red. They were hiding in the core. Varney shouted. The new breed of aliens surged toward them, weapons drawn. They were faster, stronger, and far more deadly than anything the team had encountered before. Fall back. Voss ordered, even as he fired his rifle, sending one of the creatures crashing to the ground. But the others kept coming, an endless swarm, like insects emerging from the depths. Suddenly, a massive figure emerged from the shadows, towering over the battlefield. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, a hulking creature, its body covered in a thick, armor-like exoskeleton. Its arms were massive, each one ending in jagged claws that scraped along the floor with an eerie screech. Its eyes glowed with a cold, merciless intelligence. The creature let out a roar that rattled the very air, and the alien soldiers fell back, retreating as if to make way for their leader. "This is it," Varnes whispered, her voice trembling. "The creature they've been protecting. The one controlling them all." Voss didn't hesitate. "We take it down, or everything is lost." He charged forward, raising his rifle to fire. The rest of the team followed, but as they approached the creature, they realized the full extent of the threat they were facing. It wasn't just the creature itself, it was the psychic energy radiating from it. As Voss raised his rifle and fired, the alien leader seemed to anticipate every move, dodging and countering with terrifying precision. It wasn't just physical strength they were facing, it was an intelligence far beyond human comprehension. "This thing is controlling them," Huang shouted as she fired, barely dodging the creature's swipe. "We need to disable its connection to the others." Varnes nodded grimly, looking around. "The core. It's connected to the alien network. If we destroy it, we can sever its control." Voss's heart raced. He knew what they had to do, but getting close to the core with the creature in the way would be impossible. They were going to need a distraction. "Cover me," Voss shouted. "I'm going for the core." Without waiting for a response, he charged, dodging the alien soldiers and weaving around the hulking creature. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to turn back, but he pushed forward, his goal clear: destroy the core, sever the alien leader's control over the others. As he neared the core, he could feel its energy pushing against him, resistant, like a wall. But he wasn't going to stop. With one final burst of strength, he slammed his weapon into the energy core, triggering a massive explosion. The chamber went dark as the core erupted in a wave of raw energy, and everything fell silent. The explosion reverberated through the chamber like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through the ground. Voss was thrown backward, his body slamming into the jagged rocks as the air was filled with the deafening sound of the core's collapse. He could feel the heat of the blast radiating against his skin, the very ground beneath him quaking in response. For a moment, everything went silent. Voss fought to regain his bearings, his breath shallow and ragged. He struggled to push himself to his feet, the darkness in the chamber swirling around him. His head spun, his vision blurry from the shockwave, but he could still hear the distant sounds of fighting, gunfire, alien screeches, the roar of the massive creature that had stood in their way. It hadn't fallen. "Commander!" Huang's voice broke through the chaos, frantic and strained. Voss turned, just in time to see her silhouette cutting through the smoke-filled chamber. She was sprinting toward him, weapon still in hand, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "The core! It's still intact," she yelled, her words barely audible over the ringing in his ears. Voss's heart sank. "It can't be. The explosion." "It wasn't enough," Huang said, her voice trembling with urgency. "We've only shattered part of it. That thing is still alive, and the aliens." Before she could finish, the ground trembled again. The enormous alien leader, the one they'd barely managed to engage, let out a shrill cry that shook the very air. From the depths of the chamber, more of the alien soldiers poured out, their numbers overwhelming. Their once organized lines were now a frenzied swarm, all moving toward the last standing human force. The leader was closing in, its massive form a dark shadow in the chaos. "We need to finish this, now!" Voss grunted, trying to push through the haze of pain in his head. His mind was racing. How could they defeat something that was so interconnected with the planet itself? How could humanity fight against such overwhelming odds? "Where's Captain Varnes?" Huang asked, looking around desperately. "She's covering the rear," Voss shouted back. "We need to buy her time to get to the secondary core destabilizer." Huang nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Without the destabilizer, there was no chance to break the alien's control. The core itself had to be destroyed, and with it, the alien network. Voss turned toward the massive creature, which was advancing with terrifying precision, its glowing eyes locked on him. It had begun to channel some kind of dark energy, its form distorting, its psychic power pulsing outward, turning the very air to liquid heat. "Get ready!" Voss yelled, signaling for the rest of the team to open fire. The team responded immediately, a barrage of plasma fire lighting up the chamber, but the creature absorbed most of the damage, the energy deflecting off its thick exoskeleton. Then, it roared, and suddenly, a shockwave erupted from its body, knocking the human soldiers off their feet. Voss scrambled to his knees, his vision swimming. He had to think. There was no way to face this head-on. The creature wasn't just a soldier, it was a conduit of unimaginable power. The core had become its heart, and as long as it stood, the alien forces would never stop coming. "Commander!" Huang's voice broke through his thoughts again. She was still on the ground, wounded but alive. "We need a plan, and we need it now." Voss's gaze turned to the core. It was pulsating, the energy emanating from it like a heartbeat. That's when it hit him. The core was feeding power to the creature, but the core was also weakening. They had damaged it, just enough to create an opening. "Varnies!" Voss bellowed. "We're going in. Take down the leader, or we won't make it out." From the shadows, Captain Varnies appeared, emerging with a group of Phoenix Legion soldiers. Her face was grim, bloodied from the earlier fight, but there was fire in her eyes. "Glad to see you're still alive, Commander," she said, wiping blood from her brow. Voss didn't waste time on pleasantries. "We take the fight to the core. We destroy it and sever the creature's control. You take the leader." Varnies nodded, her jaw clenched. "Understood. We'll clear a path." Voss's heart raced. There was no time for second thoughts. The alien leader had already begun to advance, its claws extended, its psychic power closing in on them. The battle for humanity's survival had come down to this moment. Without another word, Voss and his team charged forward, weaving through the chaos as the Phoenix Legion moved into position to take on the alien leader. The fight was brutal. Alien warriors fell before the human fire, but the creature in the center of it all was growing stronger, its rage pushing it forward. Voss reached the core, his breath heavy, sweat pouring down his face. The core's energy was like a drug, numbing, intoxicating, and deadly. He raised his weapon, firing into the remaining layers of the alien machinery. The blasts reverberated through the room, but the core was holding firm. Then, from behind, Varnies' voice rang out, filled with determination. "We've got its attention. Finish the job, Commander." With one final push, Voss launched himself toward the center of the core, detonating his charges. The explosion shook the planet to its core. The alien leader let out a death scream, its form disintegrating under the explosion's force. For a moment, everything was silent. The silence that followed the explosion was deafening. The chamber, once a throbbing heart of alien power, was now a tomb. The core lay in ruins, its energy dissipating into nothingness. The alien leader was gone, reduced to ash and ruin, its psychic grip shattered. All around them, the surviving alien soldiers faltered, their coordination lost, their strength dissipating as their connection to the planet's power evaporated. Voss stood amidst the wreckage, his body bruised and battered, his mind numb from the intensity of the battle. His breath came in ragged gasps, but he could hear the steady, rhythmic sound of human footsteps, his team, still alive, still standing. "We did it," Huang said, her voice thick with disbelief. She was panting, her uniform torn, but her eyes were bright. "We actually did it." Voss's gaze shifted to Varnies, who had emerged from the shadows, her eyes scanning the ruined chamber. She was covered in blood and dirt, her face a mask of determination. Despite the toll of the battle, there was a quiet sense of victory in her stance. "We did it together," Varnies said, nodding solemnly. This is humanity's victory. The distant sounds of battle had quieted, replaced by the whispers of the wind that now seemed to sweep through the chamber. The alien forces had scattered, no longer able to hold their ground. With their leader's death, their command structure had collapsed. For the first time in years, humanity had struck the decisive blow in the war. But Voss wasn't thinking about victory. His thoughts were already on the future. The battle was over, yes, but what now? How would they rebuild? How would humanity reclaim the stars? We need to check the surface, he said, snapping out of his thoughts. This isn't over until we ensure the rest of the planet is secure. Varnes gave him a look, her brow furrowing. You think they'll try to regroup? I'm not taking chances. We've won today, but we need to be sure they can't launch another assault from here. This planet's been their stronghold for years, and if there are any survivors left, they'll be hiding in the shadows. The team moved quickly, their faces set in grim determination. They climbed up the tunnel that led to the surface, where the sky was now streaked with the warm hues of an emerging dawn. The battle had taken its toll on the planet, but with the alien forces in disarray, the surface was quiet, eerily still. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting long shadows over the ruined landscape. The Phoenix Legion soldiers stood together, looking out over the horizon. The alien outposts, once towering symbols of invulnerability, were now nothing more than twisted wrecks. For the first time in a long while, there was peace. But it wasn't just the quiet that mattered, it was the hope that had returned to the hearts of the human survivors. They had conquered the impossible. They had defied the odds. Humanity had, against all expectations, prevailed. Voss felt a strange sense of finality settle over him. They had fought not just for survival, but for the future of the stars, and the promise of a universe that was no longer ruled by alien overlords. We're not just survivors, Varnes said, breaking the silence. We're pioneers. This is just the beginning. Voss nodded. Yes, the beginning of something much larger. A new chapter in our history. As the team stood there, watching the sun rise over the wreckage of the alien empire, they knew that the war was over. Humanity had not just won, they had proven something fundamental, that no matter the odds, no matter the enemies or the obstacles, they were destined to shape the future of the stars. They had conquered the impossible. And the stars were theirs to claim.